Patch 4.1 has been here about a week, and now that I'm fairly confident broad sweeping changes are at least a few weeks away, I owe y'all updates to builds. So here's updated versions of every class and recommended weapons. Every build runs lethal with bugs, so if you can dodge a wrench, you can— wait, wrong thing. Anyway, two things off the top. First, each class is separated into chapters in the description, so you can have all the info in one place instead of having it drip fed for more algorithmic engagement. Second, I will likely make people upset talking about weapons. Just know that going in. There's a link to the most current and accurate weapon testing and data mining in the card up top now and in the description. I've nearly developed a tick from people on YouTube confidently parroting factually incorrect information. This is not entirely their fault. Saber is infamously obtuse when it comes to the math behind the curtain. They were like that in both SnowRunner and World War Z, so it's not like they'd suddenly change their tune now. Please use accurate information before deciding on gear based on hearsay. And we're going to run through these in the exceptionally scientific and totally not subjective ranking of whichever order I find them to be the most fun. So, starting things off, assault. Weapons. You're going to go with a heavy bolt pistol and thunderhammer. Realistically, not a whole lot has changed with either of these from my first video. Yes, you have access to the other bolt pistol. You shouldn't take it. The heavy has a higher headshot multiplier, and the assault is the only class that has access to it, so it stands to reason that it's meant to synergize with the kit. I like going with the version that comes with extra ammo, because you can make up for accuracy and whatnot with perks. To that end, we're going down the top tree. All the spread reduction, all the headshot damage. Yeah, instead of taking these 2 points, which give you increased damage at enemies that are close and 15% extra mag size, you could instead take maximum spread reduction when you're firing without aiming, which arguably seems wasted, in order to get a flat 10% to everything all the time. Not the worst thing. Personally, I would prefer the extra 2 rounds in the mag. Up to you though. For melee, we're going with the hammer. Again, same logic as the heavy pistol. The assault is the only class in the game that has access to the thunderhammer, so it stands to reason that it's meant to synergize well with the kit. Further, your ground pound, the jetpacky landing thing, is based off of your per swing weapon damage. So it would make sense to use the thing that has the highest per swing weapon damage when it comes to weapon classes. If you want to use the others, fine. I guess you do you, but I'm going to stick with the fencing hammer. Yes, if you get sufficiently Neo level with your parries, you could get by with the balanced for the extra damage on your cleaves. However, most of the time, you're going to be parry killing Minoris anyway, and the cleaving potential doesn't actually affect how many things you can hit, it affects how much damage each swing does to all of the enemies that are hit by that one swing. So for me, I'm sticking with fencing. Perks. Real simple. Stick with the bottom tree, pick up the extra 5% melee damage, and the extra damage against Majoris by 10%. Standouts here are the increased AoE on Ground Slam, the ability to do a second Ground Slam, and the additional boop on Aftershock, as well as the Aftershock prep time being reduced by 30%. Your optimal usage of Aftershock is going to be holding down the button until you hear that first audio cue, which is shortly after your second hand grasps the handle of the hammer in the animation, and then immediately release it. This will net you 3 swings, each doing 2.5 times your base damage. Further, enemies are mobile enough and you're going to be taking enough damage in lethal that you really don't want to charge it the whole way. Tends to be kind of counterproductive for your overall armor and health and continuing to respirate levels. So 1 charge is enough. There is an alternative build where you go up the top line to get the extra contested health restoration off of Aftershock and Ground Slam. However, that loses out on the increased AoE and the second hit on Aftershock, and is really only useful if you're looking to solo lethal, in which case, why are you here watching a guide? Come on, you already know what you're after. Next, talking about perks for the assault itself. A little bit has changed here. For this first column, you could really go with either of these 2. As for me, I'm going to stick with armor reinforcement so that you get armor back on non-finisher gun strikes. A little bit of extra armor during the normal flow of battle helps keep you vertical instead of tanking the floor. Yes, it's a DPS loss against overcharge. Maybe eventually, once I reach like FromSoft levels of parrying again, I can switch to overcharge. For the time being, I'm going to stick with my extra armor. Second column, you have the option of Auxiliary Arsenal for 15% flat damage boost to your secondary, or Consecutive Execution, where if you kill 15 things in rapid succession, you get a refill on your grenade. Admittedly, this doesn't matter a whole lot if you're carrying frags, but frags are melt-bombs and, well, you got fireworks. All right, this third column, I would say realistically, you've got this one. And the other two, but why though? Flat 15% damage against Majoris or Extremis. Yes, please. For the team perks, there's really just the one. Sure, you could take 10% faster recharge on all squad members' abilities. Strategic Strikes gives you 20% more melee damage against Terminus. Eh. Or you could just give everybody in the squad 50% more gun strike damage, which is going to help everyone all the time and not be reliant on a specific enemy type being present, and is arguably much more value than, well, let's say a 60-second recharge on an ability. 10% of that is 6 seconds. Just no. For the gear perks, I can already hear the angry keyboards winding up to screech anti-synergy. Just chill a sec. This first one, I like Precision Strike. 100% more damage on your ground pound in exchange for a 50% smaller radius. We're going to talk about all three, and then I will explain. Run with me for a sec. Next one, Zealous Blow. Ground pound restores jump packs charge by 10%. Some of you would say, oh, but maneuverability gives you 20% faster jump packs. Okay, again, 60-second charge. 20%, that's 48 seconds, right? Or if you kill two things with your ground pound, you're already at that 48-second recharge. If you manage to kill more than two things, well, congratulations. You have earned more value out of this versus maneuverability. Math. For the third column, I'd say you can go with either of the top two. Personally, I like Pride in Duty. After a finisher, ground pound deals 25% more damage for 10 seconds. You're going to be doing finishers all the time. Extra damage boost on your ground pound, which you can pair with precision strike to pop off a gun strike or a melee finisher, bounce up into the air, go delete a group of warriors and all of the gaunts that are running around biting their ankles at the same time, and recharge a decent amount of the charge that you just used to get up in the air. Do you lose out on a little bit of horde clear? Yeah. Is it worth it to be able to delete multiple warriors at once? Yeah. For the signature perk, I mean, the other two options are bad, so you're really still just left with Ascension. Yes, this will explode red barrels if you're close to it, and yes, it will stagger your teammates if they're in the AoE. Be mindful of that, or just lean into RPing Death Company. Enjoy. So that rounds out the Assault. Arguably one of the harder classes to play, but firmly S tier when it comes to enjoyment. And coming up next, we've got the Vanguard. Realistically, you got two options when it comes to primary weapons, either the Instigator or the Melta. Come on, everybody saw that coming. First off, we'll start with the Instigator. I like the version that comes with the extra accuracy because the recoil's not bad and a decent amount of fighting recoil pattern. You can consistently hit headshots at most ranges. So, perks. We're going up the bottom tree up until Artificer, and we're basically filling out all the petals of the flower except for one because most of the perks in Relic tier are kind of garbage, at least in comparison to what you can get. So, I mean, sure, you could get these three and pick up extra penetration to take it from 2 piercing to 3, but the Instigator is really meant to be a single target with a little bit of extra cleave just thrown in there for fun. I would much rather have a 10% boost to headshots, a throwaway point, and 20% extra ammo versus any of this. Plus, the extra 20% ammo kind of offsets the loss of ammo that we could have by taking a different variant of the Instigator. Option 2, the Melta. Yes, obviously I'm going to include the Melta. I know it's good. You know it's good. You point in a direction, you click, things die. You could put a Drinky Bird on your mouse and play with the keyboard probably and still do fine. Still, in the interest of completeness, I like the one with extra ammo. Some people like the version with extra range. Personally, if I'm playing the Vanguard, I'm knee deep in enemies anyway, so the extra range doesn't really seem to apply much. Perks. Top tree, all the way until you get to Extended Magazine and Artificer, dip down and work your way over. Easy enough. If you want a more detailed breakdown of why, to check out my previous Vanguard video, it would be linked in the card up there. Secondary, bolt pistol, because you're spoiled for choice. I really like the version that comes with extra ammo, because extra rounds means extra headshots, and well, you're going to need it in lethal. Perks, pretty simple. Just straight across the top tree, loading up on as much headshot damage and spread reduction as you can. Easy. For the melee, I've actually changed my tune on this one. Before, I was using the fencing knife. However, balance knife, if you take the Vanguard perk for the 50% increased parry window, gives you a much faster melee weapon, which will let you stagger lock things a little bit easier with a still respectable parry window. What's not to like? For perks, I like the bottom tree. I have tinkered with the new, where did it go? There it is. The new version of Shadow Stab. Still not a fan. Yes, it does a silly amount of damage. I still prefer the utility of the AoE shoulder bash. There's not really a wrong way here. It comes down to what you prefer. I will say, though, that I do think the utility of having an AoE knockback on demand can't be ignored. Your mileage may vary. And moving on to the Vanguard's perks itself. Considering your role as thing that ziplines across the battlefield and gets in Majoris' faces, I feel like melee mastery to get a flat 10% damage buff against Majoris level and higher is a clear winner. Next column, Duelist, for that increased perfect parry window that lets you more comfortably use the balance knife. If you don't need or want the extra comfort that comes from the perk, either of these two are fine. Now, before everybody yells at me saying, oh, good luck getting gunned down, they changed it a couple patches ago now, by the way, that if you're engaged in melee in a group of enemies, ranged enemies are much less likely to target you versus your teammates, and you're gonna miss parries, and you're gonna miss dodges. Might be nice to take 20% less damage. This third column, you got the option of two, really. Either honed reactions for extra dodge window when you're below half health, which can be nice, or go with consecutive execution, just like it is on the assault, except now it's kill 10 enemies, get an extra equipment charge. If you're running around with the melt-a-gun, well, it's real easy to kill 10 things really quickly. So, extra crack grenades or melt-a-bombs. Can't go wrong with either of these. Comes down to whether or not you want more damage or more survivability. For the team perk, there is one correct choice. No, there are no other options, because this perk, Inner Fire, I will go on record saying that I think it is the best team perk in the game, bar none. No, you're wrong, because all squad members can restore their ability charge by 15% by performing finishers on anything. Yeah, that random gaunt that you just flung across the field like a football. Congratulations, you got 15% of your friendship flag back. Also applies to gun strikes. Gear. I like Shockwave. A little bit of AoE around the thing that you're applying boot to face on. Not going to complain. Tip of the spear. Enemies hit by diving kick take 15% more range damage for 10 seconds. Nice for barrel stuffing your melta, and also nice for ziplining to a boss so that your buddies can burn it down faster. Just be sure you hit your parry afterwards. Now, this last one, you got a couple different choices. Up until recently, Grim Determination, which gives you 10% weapon damage when your grapnel is on cooldown, used to trigger when you only had one charge of your grapnel on cooldown. That appears to no longer be the case. So, comparatively, this is worth far less value than it was last patch. So you might actually get more mileage out of combat readiness, which gives you 20% faster recharge on your grapnel. Up to you. More utility, more damage a smaller percentage of the time. For signature perks, my previous video was singing the praises of the cheat death, and it's still okay. However, especially in light of the AoE overhealing bug being fixed, I think the clear winner here is Adrenaline Rush, and thankfully the tooltip has also been fixed, so it's no longer a noob trap. Melee kills of Majoris or higher restore health by 10%. Congratulations, you now no longer have to worry about medkits. See that warrior over there? That's your medkit. Go make him a juice box. And moving on to the heavy. Fortunately, you have three solid options when it comes to primary weapons. More DACA, more plasma explosions, or the multi-melta. Yes, I know the multi-melta I have isn't relic tier. No, that doesn't matter. No, I don't even use it anymore. That's why it's not relic tier. You know it's good. I know it's good. It's boring as hell. Go with either the version that increases range or ammo. Realistically, just take the top line all the way up until you reach this increased capacity perk. Then you've got one more to dip into effective range increases by 1 meter. Congratulations. You can be half asleep and clear out hordes. Okay. Heavy bolter. I like the version that has the extra accuracy, because if you can actually put bullets where you're aiming, well, things actually tend to get hurt. Also, the heavy bolter seems to have a pretty substantial amount of stagger built into it, and you can knock reinforcement calls out with just a couple headshots. So, if you don't want to whip out your plasma pistol to overcharge and then maybe whiff, just point the heavy bolter in the direction of the thing that's calling for reinforcements, and it won't be. Perks, starting with the bottom tree till you get to Mastercrafted, picking up the extra penetration, because I don't know about you, but my squad mates have a real tendency to walk in front of me, and I would still like my bullets to have 4 piercing by the time they get to the horde of bugs. Extra ammo, adamant restoration, which is always nice, gives you 25% of your maximum capacity if you drop below 30% health, once every 30 seconds. Hopefully you're not triggering this often, but when it does happen, it can really get you out of a jam. Then we're going to pick up 15 and 30% more damage in heavy stance, as well as 10 and 10 reduction of maximum spread while in heavy stance. So that, plus the accuracy version of the heavy bolter, turns this into a anything deleter. Enjoy that. And with your last perk, you can pick up 25% more damage when you have low ammo. Because if you're running dry, things probably aren't going great, and you could use the extra damage. For your last option, you have the heavy plasma incinerator. I mean, it's good. I personally don't care for it, but it's good. I'm not going to judge you if you use it. Realistically, each of the 3 variants isn't bad. It depends on your playstyle. Go with extra ammo if you want it. Go with the version that has higher venting speed, which counterintuitively also increases the amount of shots you can get off before the weapon overheats. And then it will also vent faster. So double winning. Or there's the rate of fire version, which, does what it says on the tin. For the perk tree, sure, you could go all the way along the bottom line to eventually get the increased projectile speed by 50%. Nothing wrong with that. If I was going to use this, this is the one that I found to be most effective for me. Starting off on the top, picking up the faster charge speed, while in heavy stance, of course. Extra energy. Charge shots use 2 less energy, which is really nice and stretches your ammo quite far. Adamant restoration again. Extra fire rate. Moving back up to increase the damage from your charge shot twice, and then a bonus of extra damage for 5 seconds after a perfectly timed dodge. Not the worst thing, but there isn't anything else you could spend that point on anyway, so you might as well get it. For secondaries, you have either the regular bolt pistol or the plasma pistol, which means you have the plasma pistol. I like the version that comes with the most ammo, because realistically, this thing is a reinforcement interrupt, and that's about it. I mean, unless you want to use it to, delete 4 or 5 gaunts at once. On that note, all of our perks are going to making it the fastest charging, biggest exploding, and most damaging charge shot machine it can be. So you're going to start on the bottom, work your way up in Mastercrafted, go all the way over to the second faster charge, and pick up the flat 20% extra energy reserve, which is nice. You don't get a melee, because these are your melee. Left foot, right foot. As for perks on the heavy itself, you've got a couple options. I'm aware that my build is weird. We'll get there. For this first tier, I would say, obviously, if you're going to use the multi-melta, you take multi-kill to get free ammo every time you delete 5 things. So even more ammo efficiency. Winning. It's not like you needed help being great with the multi-melta anyway. This just makes it even more silly. If you're not using the multi-melta, you got 2 options. Restoration for an extra armor every time you kill 10 things quickly, every 15 seconds, which should be happening fairly frequently. So free armor. Or you could go with auxiliary ammunition. Arguably, I don't think this one's going to trigger terribly often if you're using the plasma pistol, unless you get very lucky or plan very profoundly well. So if you manage to kill 10 things in rapid succession, you get 20% of your ammo reserve back once every 30 seconds. Okay, cool if you can make it happen. Or you can just take the free armor every time you kill 10 things every 15 seconds. For the second column, if you're using a thing that can overheat, read as the bolter or the plasma gun, take this one, thermal boost. When a ranged weapon is 50% overheated, range damage increases by 15%. The heavy bolter in particular, it's real easy to feather that trigger just higher than 50%. That extra 15% is nice. If you're not using either of those weapons, or you just want a little bit of extra breathing room, well, you can take 20% more health. Arguably in lethal, you should be hitting your parries and dodges pretty consistently, and if not, well, 20% more health isn't going to help you much anyway, so may as well kill things faster. So, third perk also leans into my weird gear setup over here. Overwhelming power. When Iron Halo is active, all squad members within 10 meters deal 10% more range damage. So I have my Iron Halo set up to always give buffs, either to me, my team, or both, regardless of whether or not it's on cooldown or actively being used. So this one starts that chain off with everybody close to me getting 10% more range damage, leading into after you turn it off, you take 20% less health damage for 5 seconds, leading into it recharging 20% faster in exchange for 30% less durability. And finally, brute force. When Iron Halo is in cooldown, range damage increases by 15%. So Moral of the story here is you want to pop Iron Halo for the minimal amount of time possible to absorb the damage, then let it go on cooldown. And you can toggle back and forth fairly quickly if you're killing things, even more so if you have a Vanguard in the group. And you're giving buffs not only to yourself, but your team all the time, which then feeds into the signature perk of Conversion Field. Iron Halo is active. All of the squad within 100 meters, so basically everywhere, regenerate your ability charge 50% faster. Look at all that synergy. For the team perk, I like additional supplies for the extra 25% ammo. That may have something to do with how heavy my trigger finger is on the heavy bolter. Also, I'm giving the rest of the team 25% more ammo. So, yeah, if you find that your entire team is getting deleted, specifically from ranged attacks, you can always swap that over to Encompassing Aegis for a flat 20% damage reduction from ranged enemies. Also, before anyone says anything, no, I don't get immediately blown up for having 30% less on my Iron Halo. What are you on about? And firmly middle of the pack, wrapping my Grey Knights here, we've got the Bulwark. So, starting things off with secondaries. Same thing has happened with the Heavy, who have access to the Bolt Pistol and the Plasma Pistol, which, can you guess? Means you have the Plasma Pistol. Exact same setup as the Heavy. Go with the one with the most ammo, go with the wiggly path to make it charge faster, have more ammo, and do more damage and have a larger explosion radius. Or the melee weapon, just as we talked about with the Assault, the Bulwark is the only class that has access to the Power Sword right now. Therefore, it is a safe assumption to say that the Power Sword is designed with the Bulwark's kit in mind. Sure, you can be effective with either of those two weapons. No, I'm not going to tell you which versions of these other two options to use outside of please go fencing. As for the chainsword, we'll cover it when I talk about the tactical at the end, and just no. So weapon choice at Relic tier is the same as the Thunderhammer, basically. If you want the snappiest parry windows, especially after the parry changes, stick with fencing. Cleaving potential really doesn't matter. Once again, that's the damage you do to everything that you cleave, not the number of enemies you hit. And going to be cleaving Minoris is down anyway with your parries and your whirl. So damage on cleave, kind of secondary of a concern. If you want something with a little bit different stats, you can go with either the balance swords. Just please don't use block. Never use block. Moving on to perks. I like the top tree up to Artificer and then dipping down to the bottom and wiggling around. Realistically, this gives you a little bit more single target damage, which is one of the places the Bulwark is sorely lacking. Running through it real quick, extra melee damage when you have full armor, well, you're going to be getting hit a lot, so it's not going to happen terribly often, but it's cool when it does. After switching sword style, you deal 20% more melee damage for 5 seconds. That applies whether or not you manually switch it or do it as part of the lunging combo. Extra damage for each consecutive light attack. Speed style combo length goes from 4 to 5. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. Extra damage to chaos. Extra damage to bugs. After killing 10 enemies in rapid succession with a light combo, you do not lose control upon taking heavy hits, so you cannot be knocked back for 5 seconds. This one really doesn't matter. It's sacrificial, because you're getting that from one of our Bulwark perks anyway. Which leads us to Cutting Edge. Power Rake deals 50% more melee damage. Once again, the Bulwark is kind of lacking in single target damage, unless you're getting the parry counters off all the time, which you should be anyway. This just helps you get a little bit more. 15% extra damage against Extremis, and 10% against Majoris. Once again, you're going to be cleaving down the Minoris anyway, since they're basically free armor pips, so don't need to prioritize that one. And that takes us to the perk tree itself. You got a couple options, at least for your core skills. Yes, the shock build is perfectly viable and lethal. You want to run it? Cool. You go with Intimidating Aura, Shock and Awe, and Defensive Advantage. Enjoy. If you want a little bit more survival, here's what I run. Intimidating Aura, because I do still enjoy the AoE on a perfect parry, and a little bit of extra wave clear never hurt. If you find yourself getting absolutely wrecked and you're just desperate for more survivability, in which case I would say get better at parries, you can always take Conviction. So you take 25% less health damage for 5 seconds anytime your armor is fully depleted. Next, we've got Scrambled Targeting. If you're surrounded by 5 or more enemies, you take 20% less damage from ranged attacks. Again, if you're surrounded by enemies, you should be less likely to get targeted by ranged attacks, but in the event that that's not the case, just a flat 20% reduction when you're not blocking, nice. And that's less reliant on you remembering to hit block to, instead shower all the things around you in that damage. Also, I'm not sure if this has been patched yet. It used to actually damage friendlies as well if they were within that 10-meter radius, and that's a bad time. For this third column, I like armor reinforcement, which lets non-finisher gun strikes also restore armor. Armor pips for days. Enjoy it. And for the team perk, you have two really subpar options in the form of unyielding ceramite and effective formation, or could go with advanced conditioning, which is going to help everybody out all the time, meaning your contested health fades 50% more slowly for all squad members. And you may not have noticed, but contested health fades real quick in lethal. For your gear perks, I like focus strength. A little bit of extra breathing room every time you shield bash is nice. Your other options here are really kind of subpar. Either more damage on shield bash or faster restoration of armor, but lesser duration. No. For these next 2 points here, you do need to keep an eye on whether or not these talents are bugged. Up until very recently, Invigorating Icon and Inspiration had their effects swapped. So, assuming that the talents are doing what they're supposed to be doing, be taking these too. Do your homework, make sure they're not bugged. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time. So, Invigorating Icon. When the banner is activated, all of your squaddies get maximum contested health, which, even if there's nothing to execute, all of you pop a stim pack, you're all back to full health, and you've also cleared a mortal wound. It's nice. This last one, I like Rejuvenating Effect, because being able to just plant a friendship flag and res my buddies without needing to stop and take damage, it's nice. It saves runs. And finally, coming into the signature perk here, we have the double-edged sword that is Armored Advance. It says, if you have armor remaining, you do not lose control on taking heavy hits and you cannot be knocked back. Quick note here, heavy hits are not only the things that come in red circles. They are also the regular hits that stagger you. A while back, a viewer corrected me on that, and I've seen a few people also saying, oh, but I don't get hit by the reds because I just dodge. I'm like, hey, that's not what a heavy hit is. So I was wrong. I learned. Hopefully you can learn and be less wrong. The nice part about being wrong is you can assimilate new information, change your opinion, go back to being right. What's nice about this is it lets you avoid that stagger lock most of the time anyway. So say you miss a parry, well, you can parry the very next thing so long as you still have armor. And up next, we have the sniper. So in order of my preference in terms of effectiveness, not how fun they are to play when talking about lethal, you have the Stalker Bolt Rifle, followed by the Las, followed by the Bolt. Yes, they're all three viable in lethal. Arguably, the Las is going to do the most damage, that the Stalker brings a little bit more utility. So we're going to start here. Also, you might notice I haven't mentioned the Bolt Carbine. Bolt Carbine does not get any additional bonus headshot damage versus the other two, and with how reliant damage calculations are on consistently hitting headshots, you're doing yourself a disservice by using it. Look at the spreadsheet. It's linked. Just no, stop it. For your Stalker variant, I like the one that comes with more ammo. It's a little bit more breathing room and perks. Once again, we're wiggling around because the last talent points over in Relic are kind of bad. Starting on the bottom, extra damage for things far away, extra damage when you're not looking great, less recoil, throwaway point, more headshot damage, more ammo. This one's nice. And the one that really makes it work, Reloaded Restoration. After reloading, your ammo reserve is restored by 50% of the number of enemies hit. Leveling this up all the way up until you get this perk is painful. It is absolutely worth it when you get there, though. Trust me on that. And moving on to the Las. Once again, I'm going to take the version that has the most ammo because, well, you don't get a whole lot of it. And missing Las shots is soul crushing. So don't do it. And if you do, well, it hurts a little bit less. Perks. Yeah, I skip out on the second radius increase because I think a flat 20% more headshot damage is a little bit more worthwhile. So we're going to take the bottom tree for extra ammo, Adamant Restoration, which again, once your health goes below 30%, you get 25% of your total ammo back. Extra radius, extra headshot damage, throwaway point, more headshot damage, a little bit of sustain when your health is below 30%. If you manage to get some collaterals, you'll get a little bit of a heal. It's not terribly world altering, but it's nice. And perpetual velocity for a little bit of quality of life, making your shots charge just a little bit faster. If you really wanted to, you could give up this 10% more headshot damage in exchange for 20% more ammo. Up to you. Either is fine. And then moving on to the Bolt. Once again, going with the one that has ammo, because still not much. When it comes to the Bolt, you're going to be playing a lot closer than perhaps you think you should. So if you want to embrace your inner Hutch or Wings of Liberty or Any of the other, like original Modern Warfare 2 quickscopers, the first one, not the recent remake, we don't talk about that one. This is the one for you. So we're going to stick largely to that bottom tree because that gives us access to a lot of those same perks from the Stalker, in addition to more flat ammo reserve, more headshot damage, and that same reloaded restoration perk. From here, you get an extra 10% against Terminus, and you can pick and choose between an extra 10% to Chaos, which is really nice, honestly, or less spread when you're not aiming. If you want to try to no-scope as Angor, I know which one I'm picking, though. So for the secondaries, we're going to go with the bolt pistol. And since all of your primary weapons don't tend to come with a whole lot of ammo, we're picking the one that gives you 180 in reserve, because you'll need it. Same build as the bolt pistol in the other classes, all along the top tree, going up until this last headshot damage perk to stack the headshot damage and the spread reduction. Then finally, you're going to pick up the extra mag size. For your melee, well, got the combat knife. You could go with the balanced one for many of the same reasons I outlined on the Vanguard, or you could play it safe and stick with the fencing. Up to you. Either's fine. Perks looks exactly the same as it does on the Vanguard, so bottom tree, pick up these 2 extra points. Again, you could try the one that comes with Shadow Stab. I find the utility, once again, of the Shoulder Bash to outweigh the potential damage boost. And for the Sniper perks itself, I'm going to go with Melee Mastery because eventually a Majoris is going to get in your face, and you need to educate them. So take the flat 10% damage boost against Majoris and higher. I mean, sure, you could take Block Break, but at that point, you're kind of wasting your primary ammo anyway. Medicaid Adept is nice if your squaddies tend to go down pretty frequently for the 30% faster res. Either of these is fine. Up next, I think High Capacity gives you the most consistent boost of the 3 options. If you're going to use the LAS, you could argue for Vantage Point if you can commit to standing still for a second or half a second before you start charging. But, a lot of the times you have to stay pretty mobile, especially in lethal, so high capacity gives you the most consistent boost. This third column depends on which weapon you're using. If you're not using the LAS, go with Iron Grip, which reduces the recoil on the Bolt and Stalker rifle. No, we're not talking about dexterous hands, because you were paying attention earlier when I was talking about headshot damage. If you're using the LAS, obviously you're going to go with lethal efficiency so that you get free ammo every time you collat. For the team perks, you have 2 very mediocre talents in the form of 10% more headshot damage or 20% weapon spread reduction for your squad. Or you could just go with this one, which is the correct choice, which restores your ability charge for any squad member on any headshot kill. That's nice. I'd say this is probably third place to the Vanguard and the Bulwark. For your gear perks, I like these 3. First one, headshot kill restores camo cloak's charge by 5%. There's lots of Minoris around. Pop a few skulls, and that, plus the squad renewal, you're going to have your cloak back real quick, which feeds into targeted shot, first range attack that breaks camo cloak, deals 75% more damage. That does a little bit more than tickle, especially if you're using the LAS. In fact, all 3 are gonna chunk with this talent. Following that up with lingering concealment, which really makes the whole playstyle work. So it reads, after performing an attack that breaks camo cloak, you remain hidden for 2 seconds. So the way you want to do this in practice is you find the thing that you want to perforate, cloak, fire, take advantage of the 2 seconds of cloak, fire some more, then go pop a couple skulls to get your camo cloak right back. Congratulations. That's your new core gameplay loop. For the signature perks, I would say all 3 of these are viable-ish. I prefer evasion because a 15-second cooldown to give you a free cloak for 5 seconds after a perfect dodge. That's nice. Emergency Override is your standard cheat death. However, unlike the Vanguard, this one comes with invulnerability and camo for 5 seconds, once every 3 minutes. Not awful. Hopefully you're not needing it that often. For the last one, you get 4 consecutive headshots, you get an equipment charge back. Again, nice if you're running around with cracks and melt-a-bombs. I don't know about you, but I haven't found a whole lot of crack grenades since 4.1. Maybe RNGesus just continues to dislike me. I don't know. And coming in last here with the profoundly effective and profoundly boring to play tactical. When it comes to primaries, you got 4 options, really. The standard bolt rifle with a grenade launcher, the melta rifle, the plasma incinerator, and the stalker. All 4 of those were good before. All 4 of those are good still. Now, before people go, oh, but the auto bolt and the heavy bolt and the carbine, oh, they all got buffs. Yes, they did. And I would encourage you to go look at that spreadsheet that I mentioned earlier and is in the description and also once again in the card up at the top right now. All of those weapons don't get bonus headshot damage beyond the baseline. So all of those weapons are going to be comparatively terrible at killing Majoris. Oh, okay, so you want to use the auto bolt or the heavy bolt to clear hordes? Cool. Why are you taking those instead of a Melta or a Plasma or the grenade launcher? It's like that bit from Suicide Squad. It does what they do, but worse. So, moving on. Grenade launcher. Perks. Bottom tree. Picking up almost all of Artificer tier and working our way over to get to Relic for the extra 10% headshot damage. This is the same build that I'd linked in my tactical video. So if you want a more detailed breakdown of why I picked these perks, link is up there. Really, the standouts here: extra mag size, spread reduction, headshot damage, extra ammo, mag restoration. What really makes this sing is the perk on the tactical itself that restores your ammo and your grenades. So, moving on. Option 2, Melta Rifle. Again, just like on the Vanguard, I like the one that has ammo. Same build as on the Vanguard. I don't really think much more really needs to be said about the Melta. For the Plasma Incinerator, I like the version with the extra ammo. Could go with venting speed. You could go with rate of fire. I would say any of those three are solid. Comes down to which one you prefer. For the perks, once again, this was in the tactical video, starting with less heat, faster charge, extra ammo. This one's huge. Adamant restoration for the refill if your health goes below 30%. Extra damage radius, more damage radius, extra cooling, and a cool sacrificial point to get over to increase projectile speed by 25%. From here, instead of picking up the final 25% projectile speed, I found that I had enough speed that it was fine, and instead went for the charge shots used to less energy. Stretch your ammo a little bit further, you know? For the Stalker, same build as on the Sniper. Just go ahead and click over to that chapter marker. Secondaries, Bolt Pistol. Go with the one that has the most ammo. Once again, same thing, all the way across the top for spread reduction, headshot damage, culminating in the extra 15% on the mag, because that's arguably more useful than maximum spread reduction when you fire it from the hip. Seriously, it ADS is fast. Just aim. For your melee, we have the trusty chainsword, because that's all you get. Fortunately, the chainsword is pretty good. I like the fencing version. You can always go with balanced if you want. I like the responsiveness of fencing, especially after the recent changes. Perks, we're going up the bottom tree, just collecting all of the melee damage nodes we can, extending the light combo length, extra damage against everything, less range damage while we're flailing around, and the double stomp. And as for the perks of the tactical class itself, most of these are pretty set, but you've got some options when it comes to the first two. So if you're going to be using a bolt-based weapon, use Kraken, a little bit of extra penetration. Never hurt anybody, except for the guy that was standing behind the guy that you were shooting at. Using the plasma, just go ahead and use this one for the extra 30% damage if you're over half heat. The second tier, you can either choose between versatility, which gives your secondary weapon 20% more damage either until you reload it or swap back to your primary. So you can actually spit out some pretty respectable DPS with the bog standard bolt pistol. Alternatively, if you find yourself getting a lot of gun strikes, you can always go with Relentless Pursuit for the 25% increase to range damage for 5 seconds. If you're the type to make the most of your stomps, well, this might get you some mileage. I think the 20% more on-demand damage is nice, but hey, if you want to try to min-max for that extra 5%, you do you. Third tier, this one's kind of non-negotiable. Emperor's Vengeance. Killing a Majoris level or higher enemy restores your primary weapon's ammo by 1 mag. Yes, this also includes the grenade launcher. For your team perks, you've got one option that can be completely negated by just pulling down on your mouse or the control stick. A second option for a paltry 5% damage increase to everybody. Or you can go with transhuman physiology for restoring 30% more contested health for everyone, which is nice, especially considering how much of a premium health is in lethal unless you have a Bulwark or your Vanguard. Coming into gear, this first one and this third one are kind of set in stone. Priority targeting makes Auspex last 8 seconds, but ignore Minoris enemies. It's fine. Minoris are chaff and parry bait anyway. The other one, expert timing, makes enemies marked take an additional 100% damage, but the mark's duration is reduced by 4 seconds. These two work together to give you a slightly longer and more damaging Auspex. The second one, you have a little bit of wiggle room. I prefer the one that lets me Auspex scan anything I perfect parry, on demand, no cooldown. And frankly, I find most runs start to get hairy if you have way too many Majoris running around or several Extremis. And that's really where things can go off the rails versus, a Carnifex or Neurothrope spawn. That said, if you find yourself struggling more with Terminus or bosses, go with precise calibration. which gives you an additional 75% damage on top of that in exchange for a slightly reduced radius. Just don't miss, because then everyone will know and they'll laugh at you. Or maybe that's just my inner critic every time I whiff an Auspex. For signature perks, all three are kind of meh. In terms of overall surprise utility, kind of feel like Marked for Death is nice, especially in light of the multiple extremis spawns that we now have in Lethal. So what happens is a headshot will instantly kill a Majoris or extremis level enemy marked by an Auspex scan once every 2 minutes. This pairs really nicely with Battle Focus, which lets you scan things that you perfect parry. So let's say Mr. Lichter decides to come say hi and ignore consent rules. Well, you parry him, and if this is off cooldown, you one-tap him to the face and move on about your day. That's really nice. I would argue the quality of life from that alone outweighs anything you can get from the other two perks. So that's as close to a lightning round as I can get for all 6 classes while still remaining moderately comprehensive and explaining my choices. If you found any of this useful or just appreciate it all being in one place, do me a favor, hit the YouTube buttons so more people can come to a place where they can get evidence-based information all in one place instead of having to cobble together a playlist of reference for like, oh, okay, want to play my assault today, so I got to go find this creator and pull up this video. And then, no, it's all right here, one spot. And as always, if you have thoughts or questions about the perk or weapon choices I've made, go ahead and drop them down in the comments. I will ask, though, if you're going to say anything about the weapons, go look at the spreadsheet first. Base your decisions on actual data, not feels. And wrapping up this uncharacteristically long video, I've been Bald Squid, and I'll see you next time.